1 second. All right, so I will get started here. So welcome everybody to the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the National Black MBA's workshop. This is our second lunch and learn. Yeah, our second lunch and learn of the year. And so we're going to continue doing these lunch and learns throughout this year and next year as well. So this is developing an independent consulting mindset with Miss Leslie Fisher. So I'm excited to hear from Leslie. I've been pushing her to do a workshop for us for a while, and she finally committed. So I'm excited to have her. But before we get started with Leslie's presentation, I do want to go over like a few housekeeping rules. Only have two. So please stay on mute until we get to the actual live Q&A session. So then you can come off of mute. If you want to turn your video on, feel free to. You can have it off if you want to. It's up to you. And if you do have a question before we get to the live portion of the Q&A, go ahead and put it in the slido.com Q&A portion. So again, scan that QR code or enter that number on slido.com and we'll do Q&A from there because that's where we have our poll questions as well. And before we get started all the way, make sure that you put your LinkedIn profile in the chat so you can connect with everybody that's here on this call. And we all need to be connected anyways, and we can meet each other live one day, but make sure you drop your LinkedIn because that is the best way to network with everybody that's here and find out who is in your network and decide to network with them later on. Few more things, a little bit history behind who we are. So the San Francisco Bay Area chapter is a volunteer-ran 501c3 nonprofit. We are a chapter of the National Black Association. There are 42 chapters around the nation, and we are there's three on the West Coast, and we are one of the largest on the West Coast. So super excited about that. We are approximately 400 members strong with a local network of over 4,000 supporters. So thank you all for joining us today and being members or supporters. And our mission and our vision are aligned with our national organization. And now I'm going to hand it off to Leslie because we have a few minutes to get started here. But again, put your LinkedIn in the profile or in the chat and click on the Slido or scan the Slido or enter the number at slido.com. If you need the Slido, I will give it to you if you don't see it and when we start moving on. So Leslie, I'm going to hand it off to you and I am actually going to go off screen. So if you need me, just let me know.
Will do. Thank you so much, Maisha. So as Maisha mentioned, today's Lunch and Learn is on developing an independent mindset. I'm Leslie Fisher. My pronouns are she, her, her. I would like to have a conversation today that talks about what it takes to be an independent consultant. Hopefully gives you a sense that being an independent consultant works for you. And also, I hope my story inspires you or gives you insight into transitioning into an independent consultant. So I like to start each meeting by bringing visibility to the original custodians of the land, a great habit I picked up actually while living in Australia. I like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from Oakland, California, which is the land of the Lishon Alone people. I honor their ancestors past and present. So a few quick things about me, both here and abroad. I have enjoyed volunteering to support underserved communities, whether that's being in the SF chapter of the National Black MBA Association. I also support women, Indigenous people, and LGBTQI communities. I've worked over the past 15 years as an independent consultant in tech and financial service industries, doing marketing, product management, program management, change management. And then over the last year, I've spent time pivoting into the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space. More to come on that. After being hit by a car while crossing the street, I found that I had lost a lot of coordination. My muscle had changed to fat. So while we were in Australia, I joined the Facebook jump rope fitness family. And not only did they whip me into shape, but I found I could do things I didn't even know I could do. And now I'm paying it forward as a jump rope ninja. So that's a little bit about me. Now it's time to hear from you and learn about you. So as Maisha mentioned earlier, if you haven't already gotten onto Slido, please scan the QR code or go to slido.com and enter this number so you can participate in a quick poll that we have. I'd like to get a sense just of where everybody is in their journey to become an independent consultant. So if you go to the poll tab in Slido, once you're in there, if you can respond to this first question, what brought you here today? Are people responding? And I'm not seeing. So oh, there we go. The topic and Wesley, there we go. All right, consultants. Anybody else want to venture in? Make sure you're on the poll tab versus the Q&A tab, and you'll see the question pop up. Oh my goodness. I've got some Leslie Fisher fans. This is very sweet. Yes. Anybody else who would like to chime in? We've got 20 people on the call. Anybody else want to chime in? Make sure again, you're on the poll tab. All right, perfect. How to transition. You're in the right place. Perfect, perfect. All right, so it looks like we've got a mixture, but it looks like most people are interested in transitioning, which is fabulous. That gives me a lot of excitement. Being a future consultant, nice. Excellent. All right, we're going to move on to our next question, but this is exciting news. Are you currently, or have you ever been an independent consultant? I think by the word cloud on the last question, I think some people have. Oh boy. Oh, that's cool. Wow, this is really cool. All right, half of you have responded. Anybody else want to participate before I move on to the next question? Oh boy, we got a mixed group. I love it. Oh, this is cool. All right, I'm moving on. Oh, okay, it looks like we're winning by a hair, people who are actually doing it. So I'm in good company. All right, last question. What are your concerns about being an independent consultant? Let's hear from you. Oh yeah, that's a biggie. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yep. Oh, Maisha, this is great. Luckily I'm going to cover a little bit of all these things. So it looks like the biggest concern is making money and finding clients. So I can speak to both of those things for sure. Yep. Credibility and confidence, stable income. Yep. The economy. Yep. I hear you. I totally hear you. All right. Thanks for, credibility and confidence. That seems to be, okay, that's highlighted. All right. I think I'm going to address all of these things. Thank you so much for participating. This is good. All right. So how did I even get started into the world of independent consulting? First of all, a little bit about me, or a little more about me. I was raised an Army brat. So we moved around a lot in the country, out of the country, and I had to constantly get used to adapting to new spaces. So I think that definitely influenced my enjoying change. Also, I just naturally have this curiosity mindset. I always enjoy figuring things out and new challenges. At work, that translated into me changing positions within an organization and eventually changing organizations all the time. And I think the light bulb went off for me when I was at a startup and I saw that the CEO wasn't really interested in the product or even the customers. He just wanted to get bought out and make some money. And at that point, I realized I want to be intentional about who I work with. And I want to have more control over my business. And so that's when I struck out. I leveraged my network that I had developed by working at different companies, within different companies, and that definitely helped me a lot. I also found a independent consultant community that I could network with as well. And at that time, this was before the gig economy. So there definitely wasn't, I don't even know if I remember seeing another Black independent consultant at that time. I know I was a bit of a unicorn. So I leveraged that network, and then word of mouth referrals. Once I started getting gigs at companies, employers called me back. That also helped me get the gigs. But I'm just a shameless marketer also. I use every opportunity I can to network, to tell people what I'm doing, and to take advantage of those relationships without even knowing it. For instance, I don't just reach out to somebody who I haven't seen in a long time just to get a gig. I reach out because I formed a relationship with that person. And then also, I want to bring this up because Melsha and I just talked about this in her wonderful podcast, Overcoming. And also, I attended Mentor Spaces panel, and there may be some people on this call from Mentor Spaces, where the facilitator mentioned something really interesting. He said, high functioning people tend to be insecure. And I was like, ding, that's definitely me. What I tend to do is with every gig, I have major imposter syndrome that I have to combat, but I know that's going to happen. So I go to my wife, I go to people I've worked with, I go to even, groups of supportive people that I can voice things to, I can voice my concerns to, who can talk me off the ledge, who can give me a reality check and get over the fear. And usually once I get a hang of the gig, I'm fine, but it's that new period where I'm just like kind of freaking out. And then also what I found is the work kind of spoke for itself. I could kind of come in, get things done and move on. I didn't have to worry about corporate culture. I didn't have to worry about office politics. It actually was really refreshing. But an interesting thing happened. Because that work spoke for itself, I actually made connections through the work. People valued my expertise, and I formed relationships that way, which, again, enabled me to get the next gig. Throughout this, I learned my number one lesson, though: never burn a bridge, because you don't know, even if there's somebody you disagree with, or you've had, some issue with while you were working on the assignment, that person may be the person that refers you for the next gig. All right, so that is my why. Now I want to hear from you. What is your why? I'd like you to go to the Q&A tab of the Slido and put in why you think, why you would think, or your reason, looking at your personality, looking at your experience, what aspects of your life can you leverage to become an independent consultant? Now, how do I get, the question is, how do I get to the new stuff? Oh, there we go. My expertise, yep. Resourcefulness. Ebony, challenges. Love for business. I like people. My work experience. Yep. I do know introverted independent consultants. As you can tell, I'm an extrovert, but there are introverted independent consultants as well. For the person who put networking, great social skills, yep. For the person who put my expertise, would you mind speaking up and saying what your expertise is?
Hi, Leslie, it's Denise.
Hi, Denise.
I was the one who put down my expertise. So I've been a recruiter for many years, double digits. And I've been a recruiter in several spaces. So I feel great comfort in being able to kind of like help companies either like fine tune their hiring processes, really understand what they're looking for. And then on the back end, helping candidates have a really, really positive experience and giving them feedback on things like resumes and LinkedIn profiles.
Duh, I just realized who this is. So Denise is with one of my clients, EM Marketing, and does a wonderful job at recruitment. Duh, sorry, I can't see your picture, so I didn't know it was you. That's wonderful. Thank you for joining, Denise. And that makes total sense, what you just said. Yes, absolutely. You can bring those skills to the table with working with people and recruiting people. That's perfect. And thank you for joining us. I'm so excited. All right. All right, perfect. I'm going to go back to the slides because, you know, this is a lunch and learn. We ain't got much time here. All right, here's where it gets a little technical. And I am going to qualify this by saying I am definitely not an expert on business structures. As a member of the Entrepreneur and Business Development Committee, we're looking at programming. And one of the things we want to look at is having an expert talk about business structures. And also, I might even, you know, Denise, you're on the call. I might even invite some of the consultants from my clients to come and speak about that as well. But just know I'm not an expert. I'm going to talk to it from a standpoint of how my business evolved and why I chose the structure that I chose. If you have questions, please put it in the Q&A tab on Slido. We may or may not be able to answer it, again, because I'm not an expert, but we can always table it for that discussion on business structures. So I started off as a sole proprietorship, and I did that because it's easy to set up. There's no real setup needed. It's inexpensive. And I was testing the water, so I wasn't totally sure. The other upside of that is that I could deduct my business expenses from my taxes. The downside is that as a sole proprietorship, there's no legal distinction between the owner, myself, and the business entity. And back then, when I started, companies there were these things called pass-through agencies, or now, you know, consulting agencies that were a liaison between the client and the consultant. And they would either hire you as a W-2 or a 1099. W-2, they handled your taxes. They may even provide you with benefits. 1099, you're on the hook for doing that yourself. But what they would do is tell me, well, if we bring you in as a W-2, we're going to give you a lower rate because we have to handle your pay, you know, your taxes and the payroll. So we're going to take that out of, you know, what you would normally get paid. So for me, because those rates were lower, and over time, I noticed it was getting harder and harder to get hired as a 1099 as a sole proprietorship, I moved on and set up a limited liability company. Now, an LLC does require, well, I'll get into the downside in a second, but what was good about it is that now there's this separation between my personal assets and the business assets. Also, I found that I could get higher rates as a 1099 And I could even open up, a retirement account that allowed me to put away money as both the owner and the employee of the business. The downside is that there was more setup required. It was more expensive. You had to pay additional taxes. So after a while, after I'd been in business for a while, I decided to become incorporated. That by becoming incorporated, I just knew, I've been doing this for a while. I just knew I wanted to either set up my business as a S Corp or a C Corp. And I'm not going to get totally into the distinction between the two. Again, I'm not an expert, but my accountant said, you're not going to grow that big. You might as well set up as a S Corp. But just know that taxes, ownership, and shares differ between a S Corp and a C Corp. But now I could get hired directly by the client as well as by pass-through agencies. I also got higher rates and I established more credibility as a business, which was great. The downside is that it was definitely more expensive to run and maintain. I now had to pay payroll taxes. You can't just touch the money that's coming in. There's rules around, what you can put in your personal account. And so I had to set up a business banking account. I had to now start using QuickBooks, which if anybody's used QuickBooks before, it's a whole nother world. And I also had to set up workman's compensation. So when we moved to Australia about 4 years ago now, I dissolved the business because I didn't want to pay taxes anymore. And now that I've come back, and even before I came back, and I started in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, I am now back to being a sole proprietorship. One thing I forgot to mention is I also set up a tax ID that can help to distinguish between my personal and business assets. You can do that at either the sole proprietorship stage, the LLC stage, and at the S Corp stage as well. All right. So hopefully I haven't scared you off. Maisha, are you able to tell, are there any questions in the Slido or should I go over there now? Actually, there's a bunch of stuff in the chat too. Oh, thank you.
On Slido, do you have one or more employees for the need to have an S Corp?
I think, and again, I'm not an expert, but I took a quick look, and from what I could tell, you could have up to 100 people in your S Corp before you have to think about a C Corp.
And what I did is I dropped a link for anybody who's from California, Secretary of State, because that is one entity that you would go through to set up your business. And I'll drop the link for IRS in the chat as well. So those are great resources to learn how to structure your business.
Perfect. Feel free to speak up, add anything. Denise, I know you're on the call. Those of you who are working in the people space or HR, feel free to chime in if there's anything I misquoted or if things have changed, or if there's additional reasons that you know of for how your business was set up or what business entity you would think to set up. Feel free to chime in. You don't have to go to Slido, you can just speak up.
I will chime in and just say, for me, I did the same thing. I started as sole, but then I moved into LLC because I had several businesses under my consulting. So for me, LLC works best. Taxes are taxes. You're going to pay regardless. So either way, it works best for me to stay as LLC for right now. Adding on the rest of the family businesses that I have under there, I might end up changing over to S Corp, but I'm really comfortable with LLC right now.
There's definitely more involved with S Corp. I would say for me, it was knowing this is what I want to do. And I have a limited scope and stuff like that. And I was making the income to justify the additional expense. So that's something else to think about. Thanks for that, Aisha. Oh, go ahead.
Just wanted to lift up Linda's comment that, yeah, there is a Black woman who was elected to the Secretary of State position last year, Shirley Weber. So definitely check out the Secretary of State information. The resources are great. And a lot of that, if you're in California, that is the information that you actually do need.
Thank you for that, Linda. Oops, I went backwards on accident. All right, so other things to think about. So when I got started, I had a friend who referred me to an insurance broker that could handle insurance for individuals. So each state will differ. You'll want to find somebody either in your network or Google, you know, who handles that. We also talked about, you know, the liability and risk of liability. So make sure that you have liability insurance, no matter how you're set up, no matter what business structure you have. Also, for finances, when I first started, I was told keep 3 months of reserves in the bank. After coming back from Australia into the pandemic, now I'm being told keep 12 months of reserves in the bank. Also, you'll need to think about if you're going for higher rates and getting 1099, you need to either work with your accountant or calculate yourself your quarterly taxes that you stash away and pay, you know, the IRS and the state tax folks. That is definitely something you don't want to wait till the last minute to do, or it could get expensive. Also, I would ask around as far as knowing your worth, and yeah, I would ask around for people who are working in your sector. Don't be shy about asking about rates based on how they started, based on where they're at now. Also, one thing that Maisha brought up as we were looking at the slides earlier is make sure that you leverage business certifications. So whether it's minority owned, LGBTQI owned, women owned, take advantage of those certifications. And we'll also have, putting in another plug for our chapter and programming, we're also going to have a separate talk on business certifications as well. But think about what is beneficial in your sector that you're working in and how you can leverage that. I know one of the things that came up is, you know, how do I find jobs? How do I get the gig? That's a really good way to do it depending on the sector that you're working in. And finally, have a clear kind of criteria for when you take the gig. So for me, it's the money's right, the scope is clear, and the manager has integrity. I just have known over time, and it may take you a minute to figure that out for yourself, but just over time, I have found that formula always guarantees that I'm going to have a gig that I can be successful in. So think about that in terms of what, you know, you don't have to take everything that comes your way necessarily. And especially you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you're not getting paid your worth, or you're doing something that doesn't make you feel good about yourself or the organization. All right, I've said a mouthful. Hopefully I haven't scared you away. Going back to our Slido, in the Q&A, please put, of the things you've heard about, or even if it's something I haven't talked about, what is the biggest hurdle for you in getting started as an independent consultant? And also think about, is there resources in your network that you could leverage to get over that hurdle? So I'm going to go back to the Slido. Ooh. Here's a couple of things in here on the last one. Do you have to have one more? If no employees, LLC is better than a sole proprietor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to do a live now? We can totally switch to that.
Yeah, we can do that. Yes, because I think on the next slide, I was going to go there anyway. So yeah, let's do that. What do I need to do?
Well,
Stop
no,
sharing?
anybody who has you can share stuff because we can
Okay.
see you. Do you have anything on the next slide that you actually do want to share? If not, then
Yeah, hang on just a second.
yeah. So here, if you want to come off of mute and answer the question, like what have you found to be the hardest? Linda would love to hear from you. You've been a consultant since 2006, so we'd love to hear from you. Any pros or cons?
Yes, and quiet as it's kept, even though some of you, or certainly Maisha, you know that I'm working with Western Digital. Appearances can be deceiving because I actually am an independent consultant, and they have an interesting job category that they were able to slot me into. And I have done several times. I guess the transition issue I was going to ask in the tool here was, if you're thinking about leaving your company, you should take your company as your first client and find the magical way to negotiate, like, this is the stuff I like to do that I'm good at, that I think you value me for. So now that I'm starting my own business, can I continue to do that for you? Now, why wouldn't anybody say yes if that's the thing that you are, building your business on, and they know you already. So instead of so I think that's just, think about positioning that for those of you who are working in the corporate world, do that. So since I have done that many times, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll say, God, who hasn't she worked for? She's been all over the place and all over the world, in fact. And that's because, I just cherry pick based on, that's the kind of, I really appreciate, Leslie, you saying, take a client with integrity. It's really important to get paid and to really enjoy doing what you're doing, because that's why you're independent. Because you can, do everything you want to do and really manifest the things that you enjoy doing, right? And people will hire you because you're doing the stuff you enjoy, basically. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to say.
Linda, that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, I totally, in a way, it's almost like I was priming myself without even knowing it. I was doing what independent consultants do by changing jobs every 2 years, by changing companies, and you do build a natural network because people know you based on your work in those places. So that is the easiest way, absolutely, to transition. And again, try not to burn a bridge, because you never know when you have to rely on somebody you worked with in one of these organizations. That's perfect. In the interest of, go ahead. Sorry, Linda.
I want to add something to that, the burn a bridge thing. If you feel you have burned a bridge, go back and talk to that person and repair the damage. Okay. Don't say, because it'll come back to haunt you. So you just have to own up to it. And because I have done that, believe me, because we screw up all the time. We're just human beings. But if I know I've done it, I'm like, I'm going to spend some time with you, take you to lunch, talk through it, and get over it. So, so you can fix it.
I love that. Own it, be accountable, go back, repair that relationship. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of whiz by some of these things here so I can get your input on some other slides. But basically, I highly recommend you to take a moment and put together your pros and cons for being an employee versus a consultant. As you can see for mine, it really relates back to that original, my why. And you'll find that it probably will do the same for you. But I think that's a good way to get a gauge of, is this the right thing for you? And Maisha, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this question and just go straight to this discussion piece here. So hopefully I've addressed some of the things that you raised at the beginning. And I know some of the big ones were, how do you make money And I talked through kind of the best structures and things like that to do that. How do you get the gig? I talked about networking. Linda brought up some great points too. So what is your next step? And what is your biggest takeaway from this discussion? You don't need to post it in the Q&A. Feel free to just chime in. This is the portion where we can just engage.
I want to let Nora, you put a question in the chat. I want you to come on if you want to ask that question. We are all here to help. We have consultants on the line. So if you want to chime in to help answer a question, feel free to. That's what we're here for as well. But Nora, if you want to come off of mute, you can totally ask your question or I can ask it for you, either one.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I was asking, how can I start an LLC and start to be an independent consultant, if I may ask, please? Thank you.
So what field or what is your expertise that you're wanting to bring as an independent consultant?
I would say that right now I have a gap. And the gap that I had was from, I would say, 2014. I was with a legacy Wachovia through Wells Fargo Bank, started as HR assistant and then employee relation, conflict resolution, and then diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then during the merger of acquisition, the merger between Wachovia and Wells Fargo, me having a 10 years experience in it affected me. So I decided to go back to school for my master's. And since then, I just take a little bit of contract here, contract there. And I was also focusing on raising my 4 children. And now I am ready to go back into the workforce full time. So that is simply a little bit about me in a summary form, in a nutshell.
Well, that's a wonderful story. Real quickly here, and I'm sorry to cut you off just because I'm watching the time, but
you're fine.
Okay, so what I would say, Nora, is it sounds like you've even done a little bit of consulting. I would leverage the experience that you've done, that you already have. I'd also leverage your extended experience at larger corporations, even what you got out of going back to school. Decide what areas are kind of needed right now, what you're, go on LinkedIn, see what kind of things interest you, as well as what's kind of in demand. And based on that, you can set up your consultancy based on what you're interested in doing and what you see a demand for. I know companies are hurting right now and are looking for people left and right. And during times of like bust, especially in California, there have been times when companies prefer to hire an independent consultant versus an employee because they don't know what's going to happen. So this might be, a really good time to set yourself up to come back into the workforce as an independent consultant. I would go on to something like a NOLO prep, or what is it called? NOLO, like LegalZoom, or I don't know, Maisha, if we can put some links in the chat, but there's some companies that provide documentation. You might have to charge, or they might have like a free trial period. Go on there, fill out kind of the forms that you need to set up an LLC. They also offer like background and information on what it takes to set it up. Also tap into people, that are already doing it. Like myself, like others on this call who are part of the association, and find out, get more information on what they did to set it up. But also some of the things I talked about with making sure you're set up and ready to go. You've got the finances in the bank and all that good stuff. More than just the tactical stuff around setting up, but definitely take a look at those websites, leverage other people who are doing something similar, who've already set up their LLC, to get more information on how you do that. Did that help, Nora?
Not quite, because she was breaking in and out. So if there's a way that we can put it on there or linked via LinkedIn, that would be great. I'll greatly appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn too.
Surely do so. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to chime in? And I know we're at time, Aisha. And I also want to make sure that we input my details into the chat as well as a survey that Maisha can put in there too. Just want to make sure that you guys, or that the audience here, gives us feedback because we want to keep bringing useful programming to you. And I also want to say that I appreciate those of you who showed up, whether you're from my clients, whether you're from the SF chapter of the National Black MBA Association, mentor spaces, friends of mine from the Junior League, all walks of life, anybody who came from LinkedIn, totally appreciate your coming to this. Hopefully this got at some information to help you decide if you want to become an independent consultant, what it takes to become an independent consultant, and to transition into being an independent consultant. Any other final thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
Me again. It's always me. I do want to lift up you, because you were just like being super cool about who you are and what you're doing. Leslie is also one of our mentors for the chapter. She helped bring mentor spaces to the chapter, Linda. So Leslie has sessions inside of mentor spaces. So that's a platform we are using to connect mentors with mentees. And so if you're interested in being a mentor or a mentee with our chapter, feel free to reach out to myself, Leslie, or Melsha, and we can get you started with mentor spaces. Leslie, if you want to drop, or Melsha, if you want to drop that link for mentor spaces in the chat so people can go there. We are going to do a lot of our sessions for the Entrepreneur Business Development Committee inside of mentor spaces. So that will be our platform, which will end up here on Zoom, but a lot of the stuff will be on that platform. Leslie did mention a lot of great information. I dropped some gems in the chat. Marco, for your question about minority certifications, we will have a session for Black History Month with Western Minority Council. They have a really long name. With Cecil Plummer in February for Black History Month. And that will talk about how to become a certified business, why you should become a certified business, and different certifications that you can get. So for certified businesses, like I was talking to Leslie yesterday about, it really depends on your niche and what you're trying to do. Because for some people, it works out totally great. But if you're doing consulting in certain areas, it might not work out so great for you. So it's one of those things that you really have to decide if it's going to work for you, because there is a cost to the certification, and there are more than one certification that you can get. There's also contracting with the federal government, which we will have a general session on. But there's like SAMs and CAGE and DUNS information that you need to know if you're trying to get different contracts and become a supplier for different businesses. So there's so much that we're going to bring to you, but this was just the start. And I am so happy that Leslie decided to start. I look forward to doing more of these sessions, lunch and learns in the future. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined our session. We do have 2 events coming up, and that will go out in the post email that you will get later on today with the survey link. If you didn't catch it in the chat, it will also be in that email from me. And yeah, definitely connect on LinkedIn with everybody. We appreciate you guys for coming. And I will drop the LinkedIn chat information on the email as well. So that way, if you didn't catch it at the beginning, because I know it cuts off if you came in later, you'll have information to connect with everybody.
Oh, also, this has been recorded, Maisha. Are we going to share this out?
Yes.
Did you just say that? Did I miss that?
California, we just talk super fast. I'm like, trying to get it in. But yeah, all that to say, this will be sent out as a recording in email.
Okay. And I don't know if Maisha mentioned it, but she is the president of the SF chapter of the National Black MBA Association. I might have been in my zone and
No, I
I
didn't
missed
mention
that.
that.
Okay. All right.
Mentioning that.
Thanks again, everybody, and look forward to seeing you at the next Lunch and Learn.